Not really. Of all the dev teams, the one I hate to criticize the most is probably Bloober Team. They look so full of joy and passionate, making a joke at their expenses feels like curb stomping a 6-year-old on GoldenEye, which means I really need to do this to train myself for the inevitable day I commit the crime of spreading my inferior genes upon the human race. And speaking of 6-year-olds... I know, coming from a YouTuber this sounds bad. How about we take off the training wheels from that trike, Bloober? No more easy mode for ya. You had enough last year when you could capitalize on a competently written plot. It's time to stand on your own to... Huh. Look at that. They seem to be doing fine. Wait a minute, what's that? Figures. Just what you would expect from Bloober. Graphics like you've never seen before. No, literally, I can't see a damn thing here. And taking way too much inspiration from other big horror franchises. It plays similar to Dead Space, and the monsters are the same ones of Dead Space. The weird part is how they revisited the gameplay mechanics. It's a Dead Space game, so we need to have the stomp. The stomp is important, that's what made Dead Space great, goddammit! How many times did I use the stomp aside from the tutorial? One time, and I can't be bothered to find those 1.3 seconds from 15 hours of recorded footage. Only one time, you ask? Well, that's what you get when the whole dismemberment theme becomes completely irrelevant. I never needed to chop anyone's lip to get through the game, because headshots seem to do the job much faster. In Dead Space, necromorphs could fake their deaths, so we must have it in Cronos as well, except we don't wanna risk scaring you, so take this gadget here. It tells you blood pressure, glucose level and favorite TV series of every living thing in a 20 kilometers range. Okay, 3 things. First one, you Bloober, not abusing jump scares. Second, you just turned the tension of exploring a hallway filled with potential threats into the annoying day of a cashier at the checkout.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
Third, nothing special really. I just found it very funny how you made the retrieval of this gadget a dedicated cutscene that I could trigger in the middle of a full-blown fight.
Remember me?
Yet the most baffling inspiration that seeped through was reusing quarantine areas. Small arenas where you're forced to defeat every enemy before the doors open and allow you to exit. In Dead Space, those made sense. The ship's AI was trying to catch up on some unfinished work and attempted to contain the necromorph infection from spreading. But in Cronos, that's not the case. The premise is that we're scouting a fully infected territory and some techno-futuristic shelters have been set up later on. But if there's a breach in security, they lock down and get you killed? Yeah, future, infections, maybe I should talk about the plot. But where do I start? That's not a question. I was making an impression of the Bloober's writers, cause I doubt they had an idea either. You travel the desolate, depressing streets of Krakow. Sometimes, even in present day, where everyone has been killed off by a mysterious disease. There are time travel shenanigans, which barely have anything to do with the actual plot, but they make for some cool set pieces, I guess. And you have a mysterious goal given by a mysterious organization in a mysterious... Okay, Bloober, are you making things confusing just so we'd think the plot is extremely complex and full of twists, but in reality you're operating on lost logic where you're just leaving the audience in the dark half the time, so we're simply not given the tools to comprehend what's going on? That's a rhetorical question, don't bother answering. Cronos is deliberately inscrutable to the point that describing its story in any way would constitute spoilers since most of the stuff is explained only hours into it. What am I doing? Why am I doing it?
I'm not sure you fully understand our role in the whole plan.
No, I don't! The sad thing is that it's not a bad story. Shocker, I know. It's COVID-2 Electric Boogaloo, but there are characters with personality and goals and drama. It is interesting to follow, but that's all you do, because you're not part of that story. That spot is taken by the real protagonist of Cronos. Woman. She is the main protagonist. She does stuff and has to uncover mysteries. You're just stalking her through time and space, but it's also unfocused and at times even pretentious. The story has potential, and Bloober knows how to make fascinating and unique worlds, but they rather focus on making you wonder what's the answer to the many questions you have rather than prioritize a plot with a structure, with a theme, a goal in mind. One where the time travel has a reason to exist. One where the ending doesn't feel like a shoehorn plot twist for the sake of a plot twist. One where the horror is used to say something about the human condition. Its strength is in its smallest parts. You can, for instance, obtain permanent upgrades by storing the memories of some of the people you meet in the past. But you can only keep 3 of those. If you decide to discard one to make space for another, that was chilling. Yes! Please, more of that, Bloober! Please, more, because, well, for starters, because your games are great to improve my polish.
Grzegorz Brzęczyszczykiewicz.
Żądamy wolności means we demand freedom. Keep that one in mind, you might need it soon. Nie wydostaniemy się means we're not getting out. Perfect for when you're joining the My High Club. And Unity Hospital is spelled... what the hell? But on a serious note, I didn't hate Cronos. I think it's decent. No, wait, it's more than decent. It's fairly good. It's messy, and it gets lost in its tracks so many times it could run for the US presidency, but it's a more accomplished game than the Silent Hill 2 remake. The level design is miles better, even though we're forced to explore the areas in a very narrow way. Why are you doing this? And the combat was surprisingly engaging. Resources are very limited, so every shot counts, and they really nailed that part, because if you want to turn your pea shooter into a mini nuclear missile, you need to charge that shot, which takes time and makes aiming much harder. Good job, that's a great mechanic! It adds tension and leans into risk-reward scenarios, ain't that cool? And if you kill the monsters, they're still a massive threat, because the surviving ones will try to eat their carcass and evolve into stronger versions of themselves. That's amazing, keep it up! And then the game drags on for far too long. You start racking up enough upgrades that you can commit 6 consecutive necromorph genocides. A new connected dots power is introduced, but adds nothing to the gameplay except halting the pace with tedious puzzles. And the filler sections are meaningless pseudo-platforming segments that play as a dumbed-down version of Dead Space 1's zero-gravity areas, and they all play identical. Yes, it is! Trim that fat, Bloober! It feels like all your games could instantly become 1,000 times better if you let someone chop off 30-40% of them. Make your game shorter, so it doesn't become repetitive. Take your writers off their drugs, so they stop hallucinating new narrative beats or developments every 16 minutes. Leverage your abilities to create small, believable microcosms, like you did in the quarry and apartment levels. And also, a small personal request, pass this message to your artist who's clearly too enamored of H.R. Geiger and tell them... Proszę, koniec z pochwowymi hełmami.